Hey guys, what's going on? It is Wednesday, and if it is Wednesday, it is time for Storytime with Taffy, episode number 34, the next to last one. This one is going to have to be a considerably shorter one. I wanted to do two big-ass episodes for the last two. I can't. I'm sorry about that. Also, it's incredibly echoey in here because I am in my new office in my new rental house. I am out of an apartment, which is super nice. I have space, I have room. I can watch movies at whatever volume I want. My kid can throw tantrums, and I don't worry about who can hear it. But that said, my wife will castrate me if I do not start to help her unpack all these boxes, and as much as she loves the channel, she does not consider story time on quite as high a priority list as finding out where our shoes and underwear are. Somebody's priorities are all screwed up. She's right though, it is kind of like living in a flea market. There are an incredible amount of boxes and tubs of crap just lining the walls and blocking walkways, and I know I just won't feel comfortable until all this stuff is sorted and put away. That said, the first thing I did is I came in here and I put my man station together in my office, complete with Xbox and Wi-Fi, so that I could get reconnected with the world for the brief 36-hour period that I was off the grid. Speaking of the time I was off the grid, apparently we're a Minecraft channel now. This is what happens when Taffy goes away for a day. I came back to find that Wolf is playing on the Mince Raft server, populated with folks like Nooch Dard and Jolly Old Brits. The kid apparently is addicted to Minecraft, and since we decided to rededicate the channel to fun, we'll post whatever the hell he feels like, and if the kid's playing Minecraft, we're a Minecraft channel for a while. I will continue to try to steer him towards all sorts of titles. I believe we're going to take the sort of Uber Haxor Nova approach, the Scene Enters approach, and play whatever the hell we feel like for a bit. And then in November we will rededicate ourselves to COD because it is the video game circle of life. November to January, proclaim it the best COD ever. January to March, 13-year-olds get the game for Christmas and find ways to fuck multiplayer up. April to June, reminisce about how great the COD before it was. July through October, talk about how you can't wait for the next COD to come out because it will be the first COD since COD 4 to get everything right. All jokes aside though, we're having fun. We have a whole new audience put together. I'm really sorry that Storytime has to come to an end, but it does. I may do the YouTube channel version of Photobomb with Woofles. I may just once in a blue moon, 3 months down the road, drop a Storytime on the channel because I damn well feel like it. But for now, we have to stop the schedule. But that does not mean that you do not have 2 episodes left. This one, which will be of normal length and exceptional girth. Ew. It's gross. I made it gross. And then the next one, which will just be ginormous. I have a couple of days coming up where the wife and kid will be in the East Coast, and they'll be away, and I'll have the house to myself. And I plan on just sort of a little chunk at a time, taking a whole bunch of old comments that I never got around to answering, and just answering as many as I can. This last one should not come as any great surprise. I've decided to just sort of sweep the closet clean of any kind of cool dad stories that I have left. I know he's become sort of a character here at the channel. I know that a lot of you have grown fond of his stories, of his badassery. My father has 2 sisters and a brother, a couple of stories that they like to tell when they were growing up. My father once grabbed my Aunt Paula by both of her ankles while she was hanging from a clothesline and held her parallel to the ground until her grip released and she broke both of her arms. My father once shot my Aunt Rhonda with a bow and arrow because they were playing William Tell and she held a cardboard box on her head. Fortunately, his aim was really bad and it hit her in the shoulder instead of being just sort of bad and killing her in the face. Apparently, at one point, they decided to go play in a field and my father pissed off a bull until it charged them and chased them out of the pasture. Dad spent a tour of duty in Vietnam working in the morgue, which is weird when you're a child and you grow up with your father telling you stories about how he's seen death in every possible way. It's there that he met my uncle, who in turn introduced him to my mom. For a while, he was a police officer in Carrollton, Texas. He liked to tell stories about how he once caught a local high school track athlete who took off on a dead sprint thinking he could outrun the cops on a simple curfew violation. My father joked about the fact that he had just come home from war to chase this hippie and ultimately dragged him out of the air by his long hair. He also liked to tell the story about how he went with a crew for a gigantic drug bust in an apartment complex in Dallas, and that they took the battering ram to the door and they yelled out, "Police, open up, this is a raid," and they slammed the door like 6 or 7 times. Big metal cast iron type door that surprisingly for an apartment complex had absolutely no give to it. So despite the fact that they're hitting it with this massive 100-pound metal battering ram, all it's doing is denting and peeling the paint. And all they can think is that while they're doing this drug dealer is on the other side of the door dumping drugs into the toilet and he's going to get away scot-free. Fortunately for them, he was high as a kite. And about 3 feet away from the big door that they've been battling with for about 20 minutes, he opens a sliding glass door that they didn't even realize connected to the same apartment and says, "What the hell are you people doing to my door?" At which point they tackle him in and lay him out on the floor and cuff him and realize that because he was high, he didn't think to flush flush the 20 years worth of prison-worthy drugs that were sitting on his coffee table. My father wasn't an exceptionally happy man. From there, he went to work at the post office, where he became a management position type person and eventually a postmaster. The only time he ever really came home happy from work was when he had fired somebody. He took a great interest in his kids growing up. He took great pride in his family. There was the story that spread around my school like wildfire that somebody had egged our house. Normally, when you say somebody egged your house, it means that somebody threw dozens of cartons of eggs at your house, and it was something that you probably had to pay a professional to clean up. Because my classmates weren't total idiots, they decided not to do that to Brad's house. That's my dad's name. They threw one egg. It hit glass on a metal screen door on our front door, and it took me about 10 minutes to clean off with a warm sponge. It didn't change the fact that the story spread around the school that the next day my father had purchased a night vision scope for his AR-15. It also didn't hurt that that story was true. He spent $500 so that he could have a night vision scope on his AR-15, and after we were egged, he started to go outside, smoke his cigarettes in the shadows around the house, and comb the front lawn with his night vision scope looking for someone to come back. The Jerome County Jail once had an inmate break out. I can't imagine it's all that hard. It looks like it has all the defenses of an old school Western jail, which means that somebody escaped because Cletus left the front door open on his way to get more chaw. When Dad heard there might be a criminal in our midst, he loaded up with a 9mm, a .45, and put them both underneath a duster jacket that he bought during his Wyatt Earp phase, and went around roaming the neighborhood hoping to bump into this guy. The only really super good story that I have left for him was a time that I chose not to go to a varsity football game. I was a sophomore in high school. We had a family friend who was getting his letter as a sophomore on the varsity squad, so it was kind of a big deal, and they invited my parents to go watch the game. Of course, we had cheerleaders and a mascot, and I was really good friends with the cheerleading coaches because they were my two favorite English teachers my freshman and sophomore year. And as you can imagine, I did exceptionally well in English. Me am speak language that good. I knew from an insider point of view that every time a fresh batch of recruits came into the cheerleading program, one poor bastard was chosen to be the mascot, and that mascot was given the speech, and the speech was given by Mrs. Burton, who was terrifying. If this woman, who was a high school English teacher, was ever in a bar fight, you wanted her on your side because she was the one who would break a bottle and stab you to death with it. And she would look with a glower, with a menace at the person who was going to be the mascot and tell them that the mascot suit cost $5,000, that the mascot suit came out of the school's budget, and that she had to fight personally, and I think she probably meant physically, to get that money into the budget so they could have a legitimate mascot outfit, and that they had become responsible for this 4-digit mascot suit and its safety. Should anything happen to it, it would probably fall on them to cover the financial loss. So during this game against our rival, against our crosstown rival Twin Falls, a couple of rowdy students and a couple of guys who must have been graduates because they were in their 20s come over and steal the tiger mascot head, which is all in good fun in the spirit of high school hijinks, and dumber shit has obviously happened. I remember at one point my father actually admitted that he got in trouble as a teen because he went and burned JHS, Jerome High School, into a rival team's football field with gasoline. So these kids stole a mascot head, my father committed arson. So as these kids run off with the mascot head, it's all fun and games until you realize the sweet young girl that was the mascot is now devastated and in tears because all she can think about is that her family is poor and that she just cost them thousands of dollars because they're no doubt going to destroy the mascot head, and the financial responsibility of that will probably fall on her. So she is weeping on the sideline, and now nobody's cheering. Everybody's just run over to console her, and a posse of juniors, sophomores, and seniors who don't play football from the Jerome side of the stands has formed. Into that posse is sucked my best friend Simon, and Simon jumps the fence, joins the group, and starts to march across the end zone to go take the mascot head back, and no doubt ensue in what's probably going to be a Sharks versus Jets style rumble. Simon's mom, ironically, does not turn to Simon's dad, but turns to my dad, who she knows has more sway over Simon, and says, "Brad, you can't let him leave." To which my dad replies, boys will be boys. So as this posse rounds the corner, they get to the end zone, and they're met by a couple of really large guys in their 20s. Keeping in mind that most of the posse is made up of like 16-year-olds. So these dudes who look like they've just come back from basic training stop the group and basically say, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And at one point, as they're kind of watching this unfold, my mom sees one of these big, bulky 20-year-old kids start tapping one of the 16-year-olds in the chest, like really hard, like as if he's trying to make a point and be intimidating. And my mom turns and says, "Brad, did you see that? Brad? And she looks down, and my dad, who at that point was in his 40s, hurdles the fence and takes off through the game into the end zone on a dead sprint. And according to him, what he saw was the two guys, and he assessed which one of them was the biggest threat, so he went after that one first. And in a furious, mouth-frothing, red-faced frenzy, went at the first guy and yelled, "You wanna tap somebody? You wanna tap somebody? You fucking tap me!" And the guy instantly wilts and points and goes, "It was his idea," and points to the other guy. So my dad switches to him and grabs this guy by the shirt and says, "Why don't you stop being a pussy and picking on kids, and why don't you tap me and see what the hell happens to you? Put your hand on me, I dare you, lay one fucking finger on me." And at this point, this kid named Reggie, who's about 3 feet tall despite being like 16 years old, is screaming in the background, "Yeah, Brad, fuck him up! Kick his ass, Brad!" "Reggie?" "Yeah, Brad?" "Shut up!" And so my dad basically has both these guys by the collar, despite the fact that I think they probably could have taken him, but he's so kind of fucking terrifying that they've locked up. And at this point, thankfully, because the 16-year-olds are just dying of laughter at this point, a local lawyer named Rocky comes up and says, Brad, and like basically talks him down. Like he's gone into this weird, when he gets upset, he gets frothy at the lip and this vein comes out in his forehead and he gets red-faced. And I remember that look from when I'd done stupid stuff when I was a kid, and I knew the punishment was going to be awful. And when he found out, he went into rabid Tasmanian devil mode, and you knew it was never good. And so he was in rabid Tasmanian devil mode on these kids. And Rocky, this local lawyer, comes up and talks him off the ledge and gets him to let both the guys go. And was like, Brad, I got it. And Rocky talks to these guys, and he basically starts to say, you know what you guys just did is a felony. That's assault, and hundreds of us just saw it over there that you were laying hands on this minor and in a physically assaulting sort of way. Oh, well, I just finger tapped him. And so if my dad just put the fear of death into them, Rocky is putting the fear of the law into these guys. And eventually what it turns into is these two guys go over and get the unharmed mascot head and hand it back to the weeping girl who has the rest of the mascot outfit. And I didn't see any of that because I didn't go because I had homework due the next day. So I opted out and I didn't know any of this. And I was asleep when they came home. And I went to school the next day and I have dozens of people retelling the story of how my father vaulted a fence, ran through a football game, and damn near took on two guys half his age and almost twice his size in front of a crowd of testosterone-fueled 16-year-old boys who now wanted to build a bronze statue of him in the middle of the football field. And so when I got home, I confronted him about it, and I said, hey, Dad, did you almost start a fight at the game last night? And he said, yeah, well, you know, they touched our kids. And I couldn't help but ask him, I said, Dad, if I had gone to the game, would you have let me join up with that mob? And he grinned and he shrugged and he said, boys will be boys. And I said, Dad, if I had been the guy that dude had tapped on the chest, what would have happened? And he said, I wouldn't have spoken to him. It would have just occurred. And I said, what would have just occurred? And he turned and he ruffled up my hair and he patted me on the shoulder, smiled, nodded, and walked off. And I was like, holy shit, my dad would have killed two guys. I've said it before on Storytime, I'll probably say it a few more times. There were days where I was in high school where my dad was more popular and famous than I was. I had a speech teacher named Sandy who was retiring as I was going through high school, and it was her first year of teaching when my dad went through high school, and she admitted being a teacher having a crush on my dad. My elementary school was my grandfather's high school and my dad's middle school. My middle school was my dad's high school, and then I was in a new high school. And so he was in one of the older buildings where I went to elementary school, but it was my dad's high school area. And I had an art teacher named Mr. Brown. He brought his art class up for air from a stuffy basement and said that he saw kickboxing for the first time as my dad beat the living piss out of some guy who apparently had deigned to lip off to him. So I kind of grew up in that shadow because I was third generation to pass through that tiny little school district in southern Idaho. I'm heading back to Idaho to spend time with the family over Christmas, and I'm going to try my best to log a vlog with Mr. Brad. I've told him that he is an unofficial celebrity of the Mr. Waffles channel, despite the fact that he has never made an appearance here, and that he might be kind of obligated to show up and do a little video action with us, or at the very least step in front of a microphone, which will be weird because he is not a person who likes to talk. I'm gonna set to editing this. I have a very brief window in which my wife and son are at a park, and then when they come back, I'm sure I will dive headfirst back into the dumpster style piles of crap laying all over our kind of super cool new house. We have one episode left. If you have questions, by God, you better get them down now. And I will do my best to do a monster series finale, grand orgasmic achievement of storytelling this time next week for our last Story Time with Taffy. Episode number 34 is in the books. Thank you for tuning in. On behalf of the Mr. Waffles channel, this is Taffy and I am out.